Buster Olney is down at the winter meetings in Dallas.
Come on.
And he joins us now. Hello, Buster.
Hey.
What's going on, guys?
Buster, you know, we're doing something very special this week, and we're going to put it in your lap like we're doing with everybody. You know, I'm going to have a separate show from Don and Peter, and we're going to let the children decide who they're going to go with. So what would you like to do? Would you like to be on my show or Don and Peter's show? It's up to you.
Buster, before you answer, I do want to let you know, Michael has been hemming and hawing about you and Jeff Passan. And yesterday when Jeff was on the show and he made the same appeal to Jeff, I let Jeff know. I said, Michael, tell us right now. Choose. Which one do you want, Jeff or Buster? You have to draft one. I want you to know he was too gutless to choose. Know that before you answer.
No, I love them both. That's why I wouldn't choose. But
all right, but he should know all the information.
But maybe he loves all of us equally.
But that's exactly. I mean, and I've spoken so often through the years with all of you. But I'm old, and Michael is old, and I got to go with Michael. Okay?
Yeah.
I can remember the first time seeing Michael. You forced me to choose, but the first time I ever seeing Michael. First time seeing Michael down in the winter meeting, back down in Nashville. Him lording over people there. He had a beard. He's hanging out with Peter Gammons, and he's one of the legends in the industry, so I got to follow him. Don't take it personally.
I'm proud. Thank you so much.
It's hard not to.
All right, Buster, thanks for the spot.
All right, so let's talk some baseball. It seems like Max Fried is heating up. Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays. Where's it heading, and will this be done soon?
Yeah, I think it is going to be done soon. I think it's going to be done within 48 hours. And from what I've been told, the Yankees are in big. Does that mean that they're in to separate themselves from the other teams? I don't know. One of the interesting things about Max, and I don't know if you guys have had a chance to talk to him, he is a great dude. He's someone who's pitched in pressure games. He's super bright. I think I mentioned to you guys before that this situation where the Yankees are now, he reminds me a lot of Jimmy Key. Like in terms of a guy who would walk in to the Yankees and be really good right away. But there are questions among the teams in the Northeast whether or not that would be his first choice. Much in the way that there was about David Price when he was a free agent before he signed with the Boston Red Sox. So it'll be really interesting to see. I mean, when you have the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox, all the teams that missed out on Soto being involved in this thing, will someone be more aggressive than the other teams? I will tell you that agents, rival executives are, their feeling about the Blue Jays right now is they reek of desperation. So it wouldn't surprise me if they had the biggest offer on the table.
Michael brought this up yesterday, and it's true. The pivot off of Cano was not a good one. And I wonder how much Brian Cashman's thinking of, hey, I want to build off this World Series appearance, but I want to make up for the last time that we lost a major free agent and not, have the next guy be compared to Jacoby Ellsbury.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting because Juan Soto is a future Hall of Famer. You're never going to replace what you got in the tandem of him and Judge. But at the same time, I do think when you spoke with I know this, when you speak with executives around baseball about, boy, imagine if you had Soto on your team. If you're the Yankees and you actually have something of a budget, unlike Steve Cohen, the idea of carrying a guy with a $47.5 million annual salary probably would have felt a little onerous. And so I bet you that if you gave truth serum to all the folks in the Yankees front office, yeah, they wanted Soto, but they're not, I don't think they're necessarily feeling like they are completely brokenhearted about it because, in 4, 5, 6 years, that could be a contract that could really weigh down. So I think the front office is ready to pivot and to do other things.
One thing that I'm really befuddled by is the narratives that are out there, the suite, the security. And I mean, is it so bad to admit that it was about the money, Buster?
And it's really interesting because I do think that this could be a case where, I mean, the two teams were so close in terms of the dollars, okay? They really were. When you think about how much money it is, that each team was offering. And what it reminded me of, Michael, and I'm curious to see if you agree with that, for years and years and years, decades, the players would receive meal money in these little envelopes, and, it was like this little influx of cash that they would get. I want to say about 5 years ago, they changed that, so they built the meal money into the checks that the players got. And how upset the players were to not get those envelopes of cash was stunning. Mm-hmm. Like, they were actually getting more money, having it put into their paycheck, but the players were like, hey, but what about those little envelopes of cash that we got? Mm-hmm. They like that. And I do wonder, when you came down the stretch and Juan was talking with his family members and, they're asking the two teams for, different things, and he was getting a lot of input from his uncles, from his mom. If, every time when they asked the Yankees for something, it was, well, here are guidelines that have been in place for a lot of years. And what they got from the Mets, who run a looser ship, I think, in terms of how they handle their stars, if that did, at some point, become a bit of a separator, it was their little envelope of cash. Mm-hmm. Wait, we get the suite, we get this, we get that. When we can sit here and rationally say, you can buy a suite if you're making, $47.5 million a year, it's really not that expensive. But I kind of wonder if this was one of those things in the coin flip situation, if that's where it landed. Well, and I do think it was a little bit about the money, too. But I also kind of wonder if, because it was so close, that turned out to be somewhat of a separator.
But think about it. This is not money that's needed. I mean, this is obnoxious, ridiculous, generational money. So it is about the status, right, of, hey, I'm the first Yankee to get my own suite or whatever it is. I do think it ends up being important to these players because, again, in the grand scheme of things over 15 years, what's $1 million here, $1 million there? It's all just to be able to show off that I've got the highest contract in the history of baseball, or I was able to get something you were not able to get. Isn't that the pettiness that kind of comes with being a ball player?
You can be that way, right? That can be a deciding factor. And I'd say this, too. If you really want to go from 30,000 feet, and, Michael, you know these people, so you can back me up on this. When George owned the team, he encouraged that the players would have personal relationships with him, and he created this real potential for a difficult dynamic where Reggie Jackson could be upset with Billy Martin. He could go to George, right? He'd kind of go around him. Hal Steinbrenner is distinctly not his father. He's very respectful to players' space. He backs off them. He's not going to be the guy who's going to be coming around every day, with 5 friends saying, hey, sign the baseballs, pose for pictures to his star players. And that's kind of how he handled Soto this year. He does have good relationships with Judge and with Garrett Cole. But I kind of wonder if, in this case, that Soto was really attracted to the dynamic they have over with the Mets, where Steve Cohen wants to be the players' buddies. Like, he and Francisco Lindor are friends, and the first couple of years that Lindor's with a team that raised eyebrows with teammates, what you hear is Lindor has handled it really well, and it isn't much of an issue as it was initially. But maybe that sort of treatment was something that attracted him to the Mets. I mean, we'll hear from Juan down the road, but it is interesting that Hal's personality of trying to give the players a lot of space, in the end, you wonder if that worked against them.
I'm wondering, Buster, what's going on in Houston. Jim Crane's a really smart guy. And the GM comes out and says, I'm listening on everybody, including Kyle Tucker. Kyle Tucker is a stud at a very, very young age. Why would he listen on them? Why wouldn't he try to sign Kyle Tucker?
Well, first off, Crane has told players directly that he will not give them more than 6 years, okay? That's just his own personal philosophy. And through the years, and this next season will be year 11 of this window to win for the Astros, they have so often had elite, impending free agents. They played through that season rather than trade the player, watching them walk away as free agents and getting only a draft pick. And guess what? It's kind of worked out for them. Carlos Correa, George Springer, Garrett Cole, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is their philosophy. I'm with you. I think Kyle Tucker's situation is closer to Mookie Betts than maybe some other players that we've seen in the past, where I think it's pretty clear that Kyle Tucker's going to get $350, $400 million, maybe more next winter, based on what we saw Soto get. And if you're not going to sign him, you don't want to just have him walk away for nothing but a draft pick. What I've heard from other teams is that the Astros, as a rule, will always listen on players, but the other GMs don't think in the end that the Astros will trade Tucker because they're going to try to compete next year. So they think they'll hang on to both Framber Valdez and Tucker, through trade talks. It would be a radical change, departure from how the Astros have conducted business over the last decade.
What are you hearing about Pete Alonso?
So what I get from other teams is they don't see much of a market for Pete, which is not a surprise. Okay, they don't think that there certainly are teams that'd be willing to sign him, but for more than what the Mets offered, which was reportedly $158 million, other teams are going no. But something to keep in mind, and we've seen this through the years often with the Boras clients. And this has been pointed out to me by executives and agents, and they say that a lot of times when Scott is dealing with a particular owner, there is the twin signing situation. So that when Alex Rodriguez signed with the Texas Rangers, guess who else benefited from that? Chin-Ho Park, another Boras client, got $65 million. There have been a number of those instances. Do I know that there's actually some, that maybe, some conversation between Cohen and Scott Boras and saying, oh, yeah, by the way, while we're talking about Juan Soto, we're pushing that across the line. Maybe we can pick up those conversations about Pete Alonso and work it out. I think the only chance that Pete comes back is if that sort of dynamic is in place. I think this is a case where Steve Cohen needs to control it, because if you look at the market and where it is on first baseman, that's a place where David Stearns normally would hold the line. He's demonstrated that in his time as a baseball executive.
It seems like there are situations at jobs where the people who would most appreciate you or value you financially are other teams, right? Where they're like, we see this guy. They don't realize what they have. We would do anything for him. This seems to be the exact opposite of that, where everyone on the outside goes, yeah, he's a pretty good player. Why is he more valuable to the Mets? Is it simply that they know he has cachet with the fans and he's had big moments like he certainly did in the playoffs this past season?
He's homegrown. He's a popular guy. He's accomplished so much with the Yankees and with the Mets. In a sense, I think he's kind of a poor man's Derek Jeter, right? Where when Jeter became a free agent and Brian Cashman famously told him, hey, go out and test the market and then come back to me. Brian knew that because he was very comfortable doing that because he knew how the rest of the industry viewed Derek at that moment, that he was an aging player who couldn't hold down shortstop on a daily basis. And in the end, Derek Jeter's the Yankee was worth more to that franchise than any other team. And I think in some ways it's a little bit like Pete. There are teams like the Mariners who could use a power-hitting first baseman, but that is a position that generally has not been viewed as a place where you want to pay a player. It's been more than a decade since the first baseman got over $200 million. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for certain is going to change that. From what I understand, the Blue Jays have thrown out overtures to $300 million, maybe more than that, and they haven't been able to reach a deal. So Vladdy, when he becomes a free agent next fall, that's going to shift. But I think Pete right now is swimming upstream against that trend in the game over the last decade.
Plan B for the Yankees. You said they're in pretty well on Max Fried. Who else? Is it Walker? Is it? Do they have any interest in Arenado? Are they going to trade for Bellinger? What are you hearing?
Yeah, so I don't know specifically what their list of priorities is. Like, who exactly is the Plan B position player? Who's Plan C? Who's Plan D? My just knowing Brian through the years, I Christian Walker, because of his age, he's 33. He's not going to require a 10-year contract. He's not in a position to demand a lot. He's a really good player. He's played in the American League East before. He's a Gold Glove winner. That's an interesting guy. Right now, the Cubs are basically willing to give away Cody Bellinger. He's an interesting guy because of his defensive versatility. He had a really strong year 2 years ago offensively. Last year it wasn't the same, which is why, feeling people around baseball is that the Cubs move Bellinger, they're going to have to eat some of his salary. He may not necessarily be a guy that should be comfortable hitting either before Judge or after Judge. You're trying to sort of reconstruct some of the protection there. And I think at some point, with Nolan Arenado, he wants to, from everything I've heard is that the message coming from his camp, he wants to be moved. The Dodgers clearly are passing on him, okay? The Angels don't seem to be that interested in him. I think there's a case where there might be only one or two teams that would even consider it. And the Cardinals, like in the Bellinger and Cubs case, if the Cardinals want to move Nolan Arenado, they're going to have to eat a lot of the money.
How about Correa?
There is so much concern, and look, Carlos has been an incredible postseason player in a lot of respects. We've always talked about him being perfect for New York, but both the Giants and the Mets, as you guys know, flunked him on his physical, and the feeling at that time from some of the doctors involved in that was that by the time Carlos got to age 31, 32, that condition in his ankle was going to be acute. I think, just based on that information alone, my guess is that if he's going to get moved, other teams would say to the Twins, yeah, that's okay. We like the player, but you're going to have to pay the freight because there's such concern about the ankle issue.
Well, I know it's busy time over there. We thank you for giving some of your time to us. Man. We appreciate it, Buster.
I appreciate it, guys. Peter, Don, I apologize. I just feel like I just owe it to I'm a Michael K. loyalist.
Wow.
Listen, I'm sorry to you, because to be a Michael K. loyalist is to one day get stabbed in the back.
Wow.
So Buster, we love you, and we wish you the best with all of this.
It's been a pleasure. Have a nice life.
Hey, see you guys.
You make the guy feel so bad. He's such a good guy.
Your fault.
What do you mean my fault?
I think put him on the spot.
The interesting thing is, who will Lupica choose tomorrow?
Well, he's going to choose you.
We know.
You've known him for a long time.
Well, you used to be his co-host.
Oh, I know. Listen, I would come in second in the race, but I know him because of you. But we're going to ask him probably on the air, make him feel uncomfortable.
The thing that hurts you, Don, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling by doing it, is you're aligned with Peter now, and I think that sets you back a little bit.
What? Not with Lupica.
It was Peter's idea to bring Lupica back.
I know. Well, you know what? I also want to tell you, since E&M was my idea, I might be bringing that to 1-3. Just saying.
Who's going to do it? You? You going to bounce it off yourself?
I might bounce it off myself. Sounds fun.
Excuse me?
That's good for you, man.
Sounds like a time.
Right.
Peter, the odds of me actually doing E&N would be very, very high. So what would FanDuel say?
Well,